Some stories are buried, others are erased. Each tale you hear is either true or spun from fiction. It's up to you to decide. Subscribe if you haven't. Dim the lights. Let's begin. The Blue UAP Lost Paradise. Intro. The night the Blue arrived, they weren't abducted. They were shown 1. In the Colorado highlands, where the air thinned and the stars burned clean, Nora and Jack took their vacations in the mountains. They liked the trees, the animals, and the silence. They were in their 40s, married for most of it. They had fallen into the slow kind of love that doesn't ask many questions, and relied on shared history, one that was too long to start over. She wrote children's books about talking animals, with socks on their ears. He worked in taxidermy and skeletal reconstruction for natural history museums, bringing dodos and Tasmanian tigers back to life, one taut stitch or drop of hot glue at a time. He made them from beaver fur, wrapped around sculpted foam, or sometimes fiberglass if the client could afford it. Eyes were glass, hand-glazed, and if you caught the light just right, there was a gleam, a hint of life, enough to fool a child, enough to fool himself. 2. It was August 1972 when it happened. The spring and bathing pool were deep in a canyon, steaming, mineral-rich and smelling of rotten eggs. They brought a bottle of wine and a transistor radio, stripped off their clothes and let the water cradle them like memory. They had been here a dozen times. They parked half a mile up the trail and hid their wallets under the seat. Car break-ins weren't common, but it happened. They hiked in with flashlights that bucked with each stride, throwing lurching shadows ahead of them. They weren't afraid, but the flashlights appeared to be. The canyon walls crowded close, brambles scratched, the night chirped. There wasn't much to do in the 70s. A married couple could go watch a movie. Snoopy, Come Home, or Blackula were playing. Have dinner, or stare at TV shows like All in the Family, or Sanford and Son. But the Springs was something else. Silent, dark, shared, a secret. The stars, the heat, their bodies loosening. After an hour, but before Jack opened the wine without warning, the hum began. Subtle at first, a tuning fork in the spine, then rising. It wasn't noticeable at first, not over the splashes of water, or the tinny radio, or them dunking under and coming up laughing. Then more distinct, as if someone were vacuuming the canyon with a hoover. They looked around. Nothing. Then the world turned bright blue, overwhelming, encompassing, stop your mind blue. If God or the end of the world were blue, this was that. Time's up. The radio died. They didn't notice. And the light opened. More. It didn't come from a single source. It wasn't a beam, it was just on, inside them. If you've ever put a flashlight in your mouth and watched your cheeks glow in the mirror, if you've seen that strange light in your own eyes rising from the back of the skull, not reflected, but radiated, it was like that. But not one flashlight. A million. They were trapped in the water like frogs pinned to the mat for dissection. Still breathing, but a second pair of eyes had opened somewhere in their heads, and they were watching something else now. Something not made for them. It showed them, not a story, not a vision, a memory ancient and real, clearer than a near-death experience life review, plains of grass, untrammeled by humans, great forests, tended like gardens, Giant lilies, ferns taller than men curling into fractal spirals. Grass so thin and sharp it could cut you. Air so pure your lungs sang. Rivers so clear you could count every pebble on the bottom. And blue everywhere. Deep sky, light mist. And something beneath it all, something that pulsed. And moving through the grass, something upright. Human, but not. Long-limbed, high-browed, peaceful. Quiet, careful minders. The knowledge of these humans before humans was transferred. Their gentleness, their grace. Not dominant, not greedy, not cruel. They didn't build pyramids. They didn't smelt ore. They didn't shatter mountains. They simply were. The final long branch on a forgotten evolutionary tree. Earth had made many mistakes, but with the minders finally it had gotten it right. They were not our ancestors, just a limb from the tree on which we all swing, until something went wrong. Just one mutation, a spike of aggression, a lust for novelty, for fire, for beauty. The human fork branching like smoke off the tender's back. 3. The mutation showed up first. In a boy, just a bit of extra fire, a spark in his eye, a penchant for cruelty. Or maybe not cruelty, more like indifference. It drove him to mate as much as he could, whenever he could, with whomever he could catch. And the mutation spread, one generation to the next. In the end, we did not kill the minders out of hunger. We killed them because they would not kill us, and also because we could. The blue light showed everything in exquisite detail. Insects hovering in the sky, as clear as if they were under microscopes, pupils dilating in fear. The light showed the killing, slow at first, then faster. The purges, the hunts, the last few hiding in caves. And finally, silence. The tenders were gone. The stewards of earth had been erased. Their bones rotted into dirt. No record remained. No justice was brought. We learned to hunt together. We learned to share meat and cover. And time. We learned that collective selfishness could mimic care. And we built the world on top of their bones. No vengeance. 4. Until now. Jack surfaced from the water, coughing like a hand grenade. Nora was still. Her lips pale. Her pupils tiny pinholes. He shook her. She blinked once, then again, as if trying to adjust to a new world. A world without light. The radio came back on, slowly spinning up, like a stroke victim reversing in time, crackling some warbled tune from a station in New Mexico. The flashlight stayed dead. Steam rose in waves, even if they couldn't see it. The stars above hadn't moved, but everything beneath them had. They didn't speak of it that night or the next. Jack made breakfast, Nora didn't eat. Jack suggested a hike, Nora stayed in bed. Maybe they were afraid to go out, maybe his suggestions were bravado. But something had taken root in her. 5. Every night they saw them. The gardens, the caves, the last moments, rocks thrown, the murders of countless minders, beads of sweat turning to beads of blood. Sometimes it was Jack holding the spear. Sometimes it was her. They began avoiding the bed, avoiding sleep. Jack brought a lounge chair into the bedroom and started sleeping on it. She slept without pillows or clutched them like shields. They kept the TV on all night. Loud. When the broadcast day ended and static took over, they'd wake, switch it off, then fall back asleep uneasily, right where the dream had left them. They were changed. Jack tried to pull her back, played her favourite records, took her dancing, bought her a silver ring shaped like a fox. But the colour had gone out of her. She no longer wrote books about rabbits in socks. Instead, she stared at her typewriter, unmoving. Her last story, unfinished, was about a girl with two heads, one beautiful and loved, the other smarter, kinder, but ignored. She couldn't complete it. The stories had fled. I tried to write, she whispered, a story about a cat who got lost in the dark. But it kept ending the same way. The cat didn't want to come home. One morning, Jack found her barefoot in the grass before dawn. I think they made a mistake showing us, she said. Jack didn't know who they were, but agreed. It became clear the message wasn't a gift. It was a sentence. There was no salvation offered, no technology shared, just knowledge, the kind that rots you. Still, Jack resisted. Something stubborn and stupid in him refused to fold. If this was punishment, he would not bow. He bought a trampoline and jumped under the stars. He skinny dipped in the community pool, got drunk and yelled at the moon. He mailed letters, called radio stations, tried to tell someone, anyone, about the UAP and what he had seen. But no one wanted it. There wasn't enough probing. That same year, 1973, 2 men in Pascagoula claimed they were taken aboard a ship. Their stories were mocked, then half believed. But his story, their story, couldn't compete. Not the weight of it. It was Nora who gave up first. She faded, like wood greying in sunlight. Jack caught her once, fingers tracing the grain of the table, as if trying to find the tree inside. And then, one morning, she didn't wake up. The gun was warm, the window open. Jack stopped eating, quit his job, said he couldn't touch dead things anymore, couldn't pretend to bring them back to life. Some nights he even drove to the canyon to wait for the lights, wanting to face it, but in the coward's way, testing the night first to make sure it wouldn't really come. One night, drunk and alone and near the spring, he shouted to the sky, "You could have picked anyone. You picked us. Why?" The stars didn't blink, but something inside him answered. Not a message, but a wound. A seed that had always been there. 6. He saw the branching again. Evolution doesn't plan. It doesn't dream. It stumbles. The eye, or what we call the eye, independently evolved in nature at least 50 times. Worms, jellies, shellfish, local solutions to local problems. No blueprint, no foresight, just refinement. Evolution isn't a tree, it's a fire. Once it catches, it cannot go back. It took millions of years to reach something tender, something that could see and be capable of care. And in a few generations it was lost. There's no undoing that, no redemption, only memory. Jack understood then. The light wasn't justice, it was a mirror, something that came impossibly far not to help, but to leave the guilt with someone, a handful of people, quietly, randomly, to become tombstones. Jack didn't forgive, not his wife, not the light, but he didn't surrender either. He carved wax animals, planted trees, started rumors, told the story again and again, sometimes as fiction, sometimes as truth. No one believed him. But that wasn't the point. He spoke to carry the wound forward, so that one day someone might feel it, might understand it wasn't a curse, it wasn't a test, it was the truth. And the truth is this: you can lie or sleep, deny, jump, you can turn away, but you will never escape the earth and the murder you've done. That's what gravity is. A tether, a punishment, A pull to remind you, you ruined the only place that ever loved you. That was our first story. But the atlas never closes with a single page. Another tale awaits, drifting in from the edges of what we believe. Truth or invention, you decide. An empty moon, the door in the sky. 1. They say the moon rang like a bell, not like music, not like joy, like something struck hard and left trembling. Maybe someone got married, a moon man and a moon woman dressed in fine regolith. After they left the chapel, they jumped down the lava tubes for a ride to their honeymoon. For centuries it was something sad, because it made you sad, because it could be seen hanging in the sky, always out of reach. It pulled the tides, stirred the womb, lit the path home for the drunk or the lost. It was mother, mirror, a wound. Now, because of science, we know. It's dust, a big dusty ball that has been punched 1,000,000 times. The craters left are shallow. They never heal, their wounds on full display until the next impact comes. But what doesn't science know? It appears its soft surface is just cosmetic. It gives way after just a few meters, then stops. Hard. Basalt, mostly, with an orthosite. But the real question is not what, it's why. Why such a hard shell, like something meant to protect what's within? Our sad moon has a secret. Armor. In 1969, humans landed, our first field trip away from home. We arrived looking like humans in human diapers with a viewport. Or maybe like albino tardigrades. We strutted briefly across the stage, but not fashionably. The astronauts ran, bounced, almost flew like cartoon supermen in the low gravity. They left behind a rover, messages and photos, a few golf balls, the flag of one nation, and bits of human trash. They should have left a human flag. A black banner so whomever comes next will know we were pirates. A curled embryo embossed in the center. Because humans made it, really. Not one nation, but a long lineage of creatures that climbed and killed their way into suits and blast engines. We came from millions of years of hard, risky evolution, from microbial mats through a hot proto-Earth. We survived Pangaea, Rodinia, Gondwana, wars, kings, floods, governments of every kind, and worse, each other. The humans made it, all the way to the moon. Well, if they did. If it wasn't just a West LA movie set. And after a short while, when the astronauts grew tired of their day on the moon, they left. On their way out, they sent the ascent module crashing back. The impact was deliberate. They were scientists, after all. Instruments listened. What they heard was not the sound of rock or dust or even silence. The moon rang for almost an hour. This should not happen. 2. The next year, in 1970, 2 Soviet scientists, Vasin and Sherbakov, published a paper asking if the moon might be the creation of an alien intelligence. They stitched together the strange data. The ringing, the moon's strangely low density, the shallow craters, the orbital perfection, and asked the question no one wanted to say out loud. What if it's hollow? What if this body we see is not a moon, but a shell? On Earth, seismic waves scatter. Our crust is damp, rich, shifting. It drinks sound. It is soft in places, alive. But the moon is bone dry, utterly dead. And under its churned-up surface it becomes too smooth, as if it were an avocado scraped clean from the inside. Its weight? Wrong. Too light for its size. A sphere of rock like this should weigh more. It doesn't. It's about 12% lighter than it should be. Some of its mass is simply missing. The few curious scientists shrugged at each other. Craters don't pierce deep, they dent, but they do not stab. Even the largest impacts make only shallow cups, like a child's fist on a drum skin. And then you have the perfect eclipse. One moon, one sun, and they match so exactly that the moon can hide the sun like a coin over an eye. Again, this is not normal. It doesn't happen anywhere else. And each year the moon drifts farther, 3.8 centimeters year by year. A slow farewell. Someday there will be no more eclipses. Someday the illusion will end. But not yet. Some say the moon was brought here, dragged across space like a stone in a sling, hung in our sky to balance the tides, to keep our tilt steady, to protect, to let intelligent life evolve. Because without the moon, there would be no us. No tides to stir the first life. No steady spin to hold our seasons. No shield to absorb stray impacts. Without it, Earth's tilt would wander, seas would stagnate, climates would lurch. A chaos of a world. No calendars, no migrations, no myths. Just one more failed attempt. But something held us steady. Hung just far enough to offer light at night but not warmth. To teach us cycles. To lure us out of the trees on a ground where we could stare up at the sky and want to visit. 3. Long ago, before rocket ships, Earth's children believed many things. The Egyptians believed the moon was the eye of a god, and the sun its twin. Two great eyes watching the earth. The moon, softer, oversaw fertility and guarded those who moved through darkness. The Greeks made her a woman, riding across the sky, drawn by pale horses, her face veiled in silver. Each night she traced the heavens, tireless, luminous, remote. But her heart belonged to a mortal shepherd. She loved him so deeply she placed him into eternal sleep, not to possess him, but so she could watch him dream, forever untouched. The Aztecs told a harsher story. In the beginning the gods gathered to create light. Two came forward, brave Tekuchistecatl and humble Nanahuatzin. But when it was time to leap into the sacrificial fire, Tekuchistecatl hesitated. Shame pricked him, fear froze him. So the humble god jumped first and became the sun. The coward followed after, and though he too burned, the others saw his doubt and cast a rabbit into his glowing face to mark it. Modern science has stripped away myth. It says crust, mantle, core. The crust is brittle, a shell of shattered rock and dust. Below that, denser stone. Then a core, iron, nickel, but small, compressed, not hollow. They say it now with confidence. The same scientists that used leeches to treat fever. The same science that 80 years ago shoved a pin behind your eye to scramble your brain and call it mercy. To make the insane sane, or at least quietly insane. We can forgive. But should we forget? 4. The astronauts came back. They said little. Their faces were pale, their smiles crooked. One of them blinked and blinked as if he had moon dust in his eyes. They waved at the world, and then they hid. We thought they were waving hello, but history reveals they were waving goodbye. Armstrong vanished into civilian life. The government called it modesty, but it looked like something else. Avoidance. There's one interview, NASA's Apollo 11 post-flight press conference that aired July 24, 1969. 3 men seated behind a table, America's heroes, just days after becoming gods. You can watch it still. Their eyes look wrong, their shoulders curl inward. Ghosts flicker across their expressions. They look like men who collectively, accidentally ran over their children on the driveway as they pulled out in their station wagon, the one with those fake wood panels on the side, and must have been half blind spot. That kind of guilt, that kind of hush. They look like they didn't go, or did go, and saw something. They look like men who are lying, or ashamed, or both. Neil Armstrong once whispered, "There's something out there, in the silence." Buzz Aldrin didn't stay long in interviews. He oscillates between bravado and something more fragile. They say they saw craters, hills, dust, but also something else. Shadows that didn't match the angle of light. Echoes that didn't resolve. A feeling, as if the land was listening. Some photographs were delayed. Audio went missing. Private channels redacted. And the greatest footage ever filmed by man, gone, lost by NASA. They recorded over it. 1970s mustache porn or soap operas and magnetic blanks. So we're told. Now, 50 years later, the richest countries on Earth struggles to return. Billionaires dream of Mars, but the moon? Still out of reach. Even though we went once with a computer no more powerful than a calculator. The very first time. What if the moon is not just dead rock, but a vessel, a relic, or something watching alive within its shell? Because you cannot look at a body that rings like a bell, that moves with less mass than its size demands, that drifts farther each year, and not wonder. 5. So, what's inside? Some say it's a bubble, not air but a void, from a time when worlds were soft, when molten bodies spun like wet clay. Maybe the moon cooled too fast, its center collapsed, its skin hardened too early, leaving a shell, a husk, a failed planet that never finished forming. But others say no. The moon doesn't behave like a fossil, it behaves like a construct. The upper crust is wrong, too uniform, not ragged like Earth's, but smoothed like poured concrete, denser at the edges than at the core. It holds what physicists call mascons, mass concentrations. They shouldn't be there, but they are. Buried beneath the Maria, those dark seas we see from Earth, are strange, dense blobs, as if someone hid counterweights to keep the moon from wobbling, to stabilize it. And when we try to look deeper, well, we haven't. Not really. Seismic instruments were left behind to signal to Earth, but only for a while. Then, one by one, they went dark. The last moonquake readings blinked out decades ago. Since then, only guesses and silence. But we do know, moonquakes exist, real ones. Some shallow, like crust settling, but others deeper, longer, quakes that last 10 minutes. This is not how dead worlds behave. Sometimes they happen for no reason, no impact, no thermal shift, just a trembling from somewhere inside. Some say it's metal, not a molten core, but something older, not spherical, geometric, a cage, a lattice, an echoing frame that gives the moon shape from within. A few theorists, laughed at, blacklisted, speak of a Dysonoid core, a hex truss structure, a shell built around something, not from it. One fragment from a buried report whispered, framework beneath crust, possibly non-uniform, not consistent with natural geological layering, structural resonance anomalously high. That report was pulled. The scientist resigned. He teaches at a small college now. He never speaks about the moon. And there's more. Always more. Lunar transient phenomena, flashes of light. Coloured glows, brief sparks, ripples, seen for centuries, logged by astronomers, dismissed as dust or tricks of the eye. But still, they happen. One even occurred during Apollo 11's descent. They didn't mention it. Not then. And when we scan the moon, not just with cameras, but radar, LiDAR, gravimetric sweep, we find gaps, cavities, hollows, voids, some shaped like tunnels, lava tubes, they say. But some of the shapes aren't curves. They're lines, intersections, angles. One probe returned a magnetic echo suggesting a hollow space miles wide beneath the southern pole. Another found strange concentrations of helium-3, more than solar wind alone can explain. The data was dismissed, filed away, inconvenient. The kind of thing only the wrong kind of people try to follow up on. The strangeness is there, it watches us, and we pretend not to notice. 6. Maybe, if we truly want to know the history of the moon, we need to ask the dreamers, the children who wake gasping, the poets who write of blue and sad ones. Maybe it's empty, maybe it's filled with ash, maybe all the dead souls go there, huddled together, sheltering from the cold of space. Or maybe it's a slow cosmic womb, and every so often it rains down a few new people onto Earth. Not many, just enough. The prophets, the breakers, the ones who shift history by an inch, those who bring us mercy. There's a story that says the moon was once alive, a vast intelligence, gentle, orbital, watching. It saw the Earth, saw the sparks, fire, language, bone tools, and came closer, to shield us, to tend us, to steady the axis so the seasons could form. But something went wrong. We were not ready. We murdered mammoths for sport. We cut trees to make more weapons. We crowned kings and worshipped gold. And so the moon grieved. And in its grief, it went quiet. It stopped speaking. Now it just watches and slowly moves away, its face always turned toward us, not in love, but out of caution. I think all of us, people not governments, should get together and build a rocket, not a war machine, nor a billionaire's escape pod. Just a strange, humble, patched together thing, wrapped in cling wrap, astronauts huffing inhalers, duct tape and hope. When we get there, we could bounce a bit, fly, pick up the trash from other people's lives and hunt for that door, an entrance and exit. We could lie down on the soft regolith under a sky so black it bleeds, and listen, not for the cold, not for the silence, but for the grief. Was it true or just a well-told lie? Tell us what you believe and why. We know many of you listen late at night, sometimes while drifting off to sleep. Maybe you're wrapped in polar bear blankets, deep in the Arctic dark. Maybe you're swinging in a jungle hammock, wrapped up like a snack. Or maybe you're alone in a quiet room, or so you think. Let us know where you're listening from, and whether this story kept you awake or gave you good dreams. And one more thing. If you know a rare or hidden place, a ruin, an old legend, a forgotten town, share it in the comments. Your suggestion might become part of the atlas. If you enjoyed wandering these forgotten corners, subscribe and join us again for another journey into the unknown.